There we are. Good morning. Hello, everybody. Did you all get a chance? I'll pull up if you didn't, but did everybody get a chance to look at our minutes from our February meeting? Which here they are. I'll pull them. I'll let you read through them just a minute or two. Trying to think what was earth-shattering in this meeting. Let's see. Talked about the upgrade. Talked about some new templates we have. We're going to talk about those goals for the year in a minute. And we talked about the correct way to do summaries, at least a correct way to do summaries. And we talked about item buckets, item notes, some new verbiage. Does anybody have any questions on the minutes? Or points of correction? Vicious objections? Okay, they are of course available at any time if anybody wants to check them. The recording link is always down at the bottom too, in case anybody needs to go back and review. But if there isn't any discussion, does anybody want to motion to approve the February minutes? Ann makes a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Lori, and I'll second that.
Thank you, Lori. If there are any objections, please voice them now. Otherwise, we'll do a silent aye vote. Or you can type your aye in the chat if you want, either way. Any nays? Going once? Going twice? Sold. Okay. So we can set the minutes aside. All right, some exciting announcements. From our last meeting, I talked about what our goals for the year are, and granted, with the current circumstances, they have thrown a wrench into some of the timelines, but nevertheless, we have established our subcommittees for our the two goals that I set forth, one being determining the qualifications and the evaluations, assessments, policies, all that stuff for the various cataloging levels. And you can see the members of the committee there, the subcommittee there. And Heather is going to chair that one. And then I'm going to chair the RDA adoption subcommittee. I'm very thankful and grateful for all the subcommittee members who have volunteered to spend all of their free time this year looking over material. No, I'm just kidding. I volunteered to spend all my free time, as a matter of fact, doing all the work for this. No, I'm glad to have everybody on board who's going to help me, and these are very ambitious goals for this year, I realize, but I'm committed to doing the work required to get these done, and I think they're going to be very important for our committee going forward. So that's what's going on that front. So let's go ahead and open it up. I always try to provide a time for any committee members if they have question or concern, generally speaking, about cataloging in general. If they have something in a record they found or something they're unsure of that they'd like the committee to discuss, now's your time. Put something in the chat or speak up or however you want to do it. Any brave souls out there?
Leslie, this is Tracy. I'm calling from home, and Leslie is my trainee, and this is her first meeting, and we're glad to have her here. I left a graphic novel, a young adult graphic novel on the desk there that Leslie had a question about. It's an Image Comics, and in the record it says it's from Berkeley, California, but it's actually Portland, Oregon is on the item, and we've had a couple of those like that. Do we just go ahead and attach it? It is obviously the item.
My first question, of course not having the item in hand, but my first question is, do the dates match? Because we can
Leslie,
see.
would you check that? The item's there on the desk.
We can pull up the record too if we want. We're going to look at that a little bit later. By the way, welcome, Leslie, if this is your first meeting. Do we have any information about the item? We could pull it up, the record you're talking about in the catalog.
Can you unmute your microphone, Leslie?
I think I can.
Are you there?
There.
Hello.
There you go, Leslie.
I'm here. Yeah, sorry, I've never done this before. It says in the descriptions here, it says third printing 2018.
Okay. Does it have an earlier date when we might ascertain when the first printing was?
No, I just see 2018 on this.
Third printing any copyright? Copyright date?
It's 2018.
It's all 2018. What's the title of it? Let's pull it up in the catalog here.
Bingo Love.
Was that Bingo or Ringo?
Bingo.
Bingo.
Like the game. Bingo Love.
Okay. Do we have an author that we could throw in there too?
T. Franklin.
All right, Franklin. Let's see what we get. Yeah, graphic novels are fun, aren't they? I say that very sarcastically. And oftentimes we will have companies that move around, right? And so they were one place and now they are another. Let's go down here. Berkeley. Let's open this up, take a look at it. T. Franklin, Bingo Love, Berkeley Image Comics 2018. We only have one date here. Okay, and from what you're telling me, your item says Portland, Oregon, right?
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
All right. So without having the item, my suspicion is that they were in Berkeley for the longest time, and then the cataloger. Did you import this, or did you do it from scratch? Did you import it?
No.
Or
no,
somebody else did, right? Somebody else imported it.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So John, who's on the record as owning the item?
Let's see up here. So it looks like Rena is. So I'm guessing, let's see. I'm just going to go over to WorldCat just for a second. I'll show you what I'm looking at. Sometimes I'll see a WorldCat record where looks like they've pulled their information from, and you can see right here that this one says Portland. I was half expecting to see a record that said Berkeley, and then see some records that said Portland. But it looks like to me that not necessarily Rena, but wherever she imported it from, they just went on, oh, I know where Image is. Image is in Berkeley.
Well, and one of the things I noticed on this record is it's a Sky River as opposed to a OCLC record.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
And so, and it is possible that they have moved. It is also possible that in another printing, they've put a different location because they have moved. And one of the things you can check also is look at the web page for this publisher and see what it says. But generally, when it's a printing, we don't, change what we're looking at as opposed to an edition.
Yes,
those are a couple of things that I'm hearing that I'm noticing.
It seems interesting to me because when I get a printing date, I'll get some kind of earlier date indicating when the copyright was or when the first edition came out. But the fact that there's only one date on there with a printing date leads me to believe that they were all in the same year. Of course, once again, I don't have the item in hand, but I mean, wouldn't that be odd that that information would be missing?
We could check with Rena and see if her copy also says Portland, and if so, it could be changed.
Yeah, let's take a look who all is attached to this. Is it just...
No,
there's quite a few.
It looked like there was lots, yeah.
So that might be one way to approach that, is take a look at these libraries. And I know I've done that in the past. Usually when I'm checking pagination or something, is to give one of these libraries a call and say, hi, could you just go pull this real quick? We're always willing to do that for any of our items.
And it could be that they pulled in the record and just didn't notice that the location was different.
Yeah, looking at all of these editions, sometimes I'll go look at all formats and editions at WorldCat, and occasionally I'll see some discrepancies over here in where the publication area is, but every single one of these says Portland. So those are some ideas as to how to approach that situation. That's an excellent question. Every time somebody has a question of graphic novels, I go, I may not know the answer to this one.
I don't know about the history of Image Comics, John. You said they used to be in Berkeley. Well, they are currently on the webpage. They are definitely based out of Portland now.
That is one possibility. Oftentimes I'll see that with publishing houses that publish graphic novels. Sometimes they'll move. And I'm not sure about Image Comics in particular. But that's just something I come across often. I'm not sure how long Image has been in Portland. It's very possible they could have moved from Berkeley or moved from somewhere else. All right, anybody else want to ask a question, voice a concern?
I was just going to say, if you look online, it looks like they moved to Portland in 2016, 2017.
Oh, okay. Well, that answers your question.
It was their headquarters.
Berkeley
so
was.
I don't know if they necessarily, that doesn't necessarily to me mean that they were doing all of their publishing and everything in Berkeley. Maybe they just had an office there.
Mm-hmm. So. Good point, Ryan. Any others? Going once. Going twice. Alrighty, let's move on to reminders. Just one for you today. I'm not sure how many of you use the 599 field to indicate a temp record or not. But I just kind of wanted to bring this to everybody's attention, what the purpose of this field is, if you are one that is using this field. If you're not, don't worry about it, but there are some catalogers that maybe have a little less experience than other catalogers that have been using 599 to indicate that it's a temp record and that it's incomplete and needs to be reviewed. And so I just want to caution everybody to avoid using that as kind of a lazy way to just, make this somebody else's problem. Does that make sense? If you do have a record that you use as a temp record because you're unsure of something or not sure how to complete it, contact your mentor, let your mentor know, hey, could you look at this record for me? I'm not sure about this. Yeah, don't just make the assumption that, well, I'm gonna put this field here and somebody's gonna look at it and somebody's gonna complete it. As of late, Beth, as I understand, we've kind of had kind of a higher amount of these that have just kind of gone off and with the assumption that it's Beth's problem or John's problem or somebody's problem. And
yeah, and some of them are brief and contain some incorrect subject headings, and those obviously need to be corrected, but other ones had a 599 temp record, and the record looked like it had been imported and it looked fine. So I was curious as to, okay, this looks complete to me. Why does it have temp record in it? So we're just doing a cleanup of all those records and finding that. So just wanted to make sure that folks aren't just adding that as a safety valve because they're not sure if the record's complete, that kind of thing.
This is Lori. I think on occasion also you will be importing records from another system that have the 599 temp record, and you should always eliminate that if it doesn't pertain to your library or your library system. I see quite a few records with the 599 temp record in the Z39. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Lori.
Yeah, if you're anything like me, which heaven help you if you are, but if you see 9s in records anywhere, in the mark field where you see 9, whether it be earlier on in the record or later on in the record, sometimes, not every time, but sometimes it's an indicator that it's something local that needs to be looked at and decide whether or not it needs to stay in the record. While we're talking about local stuff. But okay, does anybody have any further questions on temp records, 599s?
Well, yes. As a Cat 2, I was under the impression, or I thought I understood, that was our indicator to our mentors and the people that were reviewing the 599s that we weren't a level 1 cataloger to be putting out a record that couldn't go unreviewed before it was. So, because when as a Cat 2, bugging Dia every time I turn around with something that works fine, to my understanding, the way I do a record, it works fine, and I'm putting the 599 in so that it's known by you and John with an O and Beth and Dia that I did create this record and I am not of a level that gets pre-approved in my head. I don't know how to put this.
So are you putting 599s in all your records?
No. Oh, the ones I create, yes, not the ones that I import, just the ones as with the Spanish cataloging. The DVDs, there are no records available. I am able to sometimes copy the information from OCLC for the English part of the record, and then you know, like we were talking about with the Spanish headings and stuff,
Mhm.
if I'm able to translate them to the Queens or the EMBNE, then I'm able to leave those in as 7s. Otherwise, I take them out if I can't find. But yes, I've created the record. I have started with the template, the book template, the RDA book template, but I put the 599 in because I understood that was how you knew I was a Cat 2.
Okay, so as long as there's an understanding between you and Dia as to what that's for,
I don't think, yeah, and I'm sorry, Dia, I don't think that I've ever tried to, this is something I didn't think I had to bother you with because you knew I was a Cat 2, and if you saw my record, you could go ahead and overview it when you had the time. I was wrong. I apologize.
No, that Lisa, you're right. That was the original intention of opening this 599 temp record up, was for Cat 2 catalogers that had to put an original record in, and for someone else to review it since it was original cataloging.
Thanks, Beth. Thank you. I was worried.
No, you're fine. We're just making sure that folks aren't just doing it on other records as well, non-original cataloging type things.
Oh, well then, real quick, is it time effective to go ahead and notify Dia that I do have a new record out, and when she has the time to review it, or you know, let her figure out how she wants to deal with it? I'm not trying to say that. Is it a good idea then to flag her, let her know it's there?
I don't know if it's necessary to do that on a one record basis, but I think however Dia would like to do that would be
like a 10 record, whatever she wants to do. I see what you're saying.
As whatever the agreement is between the two of you, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, Dia, but yeah, as mentors, all the mentors, when you know, when you're taking on a new Cat 2, trying to be a Cat 1, if we have to notify you, we will. However you guys want to do it. Sorry.
That's okay. It's an excellent question.
I think that's a very good discussion. I don't know how many Cat 2s have permissions to create records, I guess. In our cataloging policy, it's not actually a permission that's granted at Cat 2. I do recall having conversations for extreme cases opening that up, but yeah, as somebody who helps watch new catalogers, just an email from them, if you've done more than one or two, I guess I'd like to check on them quickly. Otherwise, too much time passes and it's not really a training experience. It's just a Band-Aid thing.
Well, and it is kind of a unique situation there for Lisa in that you're talking mainly about Spanish records, and you've got kind of a specialized skill set that includes Spanish records there, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I believe Kathy did have a conversation with Beth about this exact situation, yes.
Oh, okay.
I might be wrong on who she actually talked to, but I do believe that so I was so excited about the 599. That meant that I had a little bit of freedom of being able to get these out on a timely basis without having to bog down my mentor. So it did go two ways, yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's take a look at some training items here. I've got some good news and some quasi bad news that I just discovered recently. Now I know that everybody here loves punctuation and loves haggling over little tiny punctuation errors, right? Because I don't, for full disclosure. And I know it's a struggle for a lot of catalogers dealing with punctuation. What is right punctuation? And we all know that there are some authorities that have minor differences here and there as far as ISBD punctuation. So I just found this that I'm going to show you. When did I find this? I'm not sure. This is PCC's, they are implementing some new policies in regards to punctuation. And I bring this to your attention because you may start seeing some records with some strange punctuation going on. And what's going on? Well, they are going to start omitting terminal periods from certain descriptive fields. And so you're going to start seeing, these are the affected fields that I've got here. You're going to start seeing a lack of periods on some fields that you normally will see periods. Now notice how none of these are access points, right? There's no 1XX fields in this list. There's no 6XX fields here, 8XX. So points of, access points, they're not changing anything. But when it comes to descriptive fields, you're probably going to start seeing some records that don't have any periods. And something to help you see that is up here in the fixed field. Let me get rid of that. Up here in the fixed field, the DESC fixed field, normally we're used to seeing A for AACR2 or I for ISBD, right? RDA records will usually say ISBD. However, there's this C and N that you may see up there in the desk fixed field, showing you that some punctuation has been omitted. Now, I suspect that in the case of PCC, we're probably going to see this one right here, ISBD punctuation omitted. You'd see a C up in the desk fixed field. And then if you notice, if you look at some of these fields here, they still have the punctuation in between, for example. They still have these commas here, but at the end of the 245 field, there's no period. At the end of 245 subfield A, there's no slash.
Can I interrupt for a second and say,
yes.
Whoever's not talking, please mute all your microphones.
Oh.
It sounds like an out of balance washing machine right now to me. And it's driving me a little nuts. Thank you.
Yeah. That's fine, Ryan.
John,
yes.
is this in preparation for more RDA compliance?
Well, this is not necessarily a content standard thing. AACR2, RDA are content standards, right? This is more of an encoding standard. This is more of a MARC thing. So this is not, when we're talking about RDA adoption later on this year, that's going to be a separate matter. It's not really going to touch punctuation in the MARC record, but that is a good question.
And it looked like the dates that I saw, this began April 1st of 2019, is that correct?
Yes,
So we've already been seeing it. That's just, this explains why we've been seeing it.
Right. I haven't seen too many of these, but at least, let me clarify. I have not seen a C in the desk yet. I imagine I will start seeing them. Some of you may have seen that. I don't know if we're going to see this. We may eventually get to the lack of punctuation in MARC records altogether. I don't know. If we eventually move away from MARC completely and get to a BibFrame system, I don't know. That's way off in the future. This is not so far off, as Dia just pointed out. So what do we do with this? This is one of the reasons why we created this. Now, just some disclaimers here on this punctuation cheat sheet, which is what this is. Not everybody does everything consistently. OCLC has some differing quirks from Library of Congress, which is where most of this is pulled from, right here, this Mark 21 bibliographic data from Library of Congress. But I wanted to put together something, and I had a lot of folks help me with this, that is kind of our SAGE standard for the moment. And we're going to look at a couple of different punctuation things just to kind of illustrate. But the most important part, I believe, of this cheat sheet that will be available up on our SAGE cataloging site in the resources. The most important thing, I want to draw your attention to these 3 general rules here. Now, they don't apply in every case, but it's a good idea to kind of have these in mind, that if you get to the end of a marked field and there's existing punctuation because of, say, an abbreviation, an initial, ellipses, some other data that has existing punctuation, please be leery about adding a period at the end of it. That's number 1. Number 2 is when you see final punctuation from, because of that case, you see final punctuation because of an abbreviation, initial, or other data that has punctuation in it, please be leery about removing that final punctuation in there. Like I say, that's completely just general rules, doesn't apply in every case. Oh, how about this one too? When in doubt, shoot your mentor an email. Hey, I saw this, not sure if it's right or not. Most of our mentors are friendly. I don't know about a few of them, but at least Heather and I tend to won't bite your head off that bad. Anyway, and then the rest of it, we've got some specific information for specific fields that you might want to reference as a cheat sheet. Do I add a final period if there isn't one? If I see this existing punctuation, should I add a period at the end of it? Yes, no. And then some specific note, some specific information regarding each field. Now, let's go down here, and I put together something just for fun. This is all pulled from the same record, and I'd like to draw your attention to the 264 fields. Don't look at the 245 field. They're all the same. Which one of these, A, B, C, or D, is the correct way to end each of the 264 fields? Just take a minute and think about it. Take a look at them. Because I know I've seen these examples of this everywhere. All right, any brave souls want to take a guess as to which one is right? And no, it's not a trick question, and multiple ones are right.
I'll take a guess. This is Tracy at B.
Tracy says B. Do we have any other guesses? Was that a guess, Ryan? A? Beth says A? Okay. Leanne says C. Any other guesses? We got some differing opinions here. All right, well, congratulations. Oh, we got one more here. Lori says C and D. The correct answer.
I was gonna say maybe D.
Oh, sorry. Ryan says B. Okay.
Yeah.
D, dog.
Oh, D. Sorry. Ryan says D. Okay, well, I'm glad I put this together. Lori says no EOF punctuation. What do you mean by EOF, Lori? End of, and what does EOF mean? End of field. No end of field punctuation. Okay. The correct answer is C. Now let's talk about why. So let's look at A. Now, what do I notice in A? Both of these are wrong. 264. Why? Because we have an ending bracket here, which means that we do not have a period after this ending bracket here in 264 subfield A. Why is 264C wrong? Because in 264C, which is copyright, let me look over here. Do we have a final period of 264 second indicator 4? No, we don't. So both of those are wrong, but nobody picked A. Okay, letter B. What is wrong with letter B? Anything wrong with this? Nope, nothing's wrong with that. Ends in a bracket. And no period there, that's fine. Once again, same problem here, right? We have a period at the end of 264 second indicator 4, copyright information, and there's a final period here, which is wrong. So we look at letter C, and let's look down here. There's no period at the end of copyright statement, which is right. And we've got a period here, but we also have no bracket, right? So when we have no bracket in 264 second indicator 1, then there is a final period, which should be over here on the cheat sheet. So second indicator 1, 264 field can end in a period or can end in a bracket, as it is here. Okay, and I got some in the chat. Sorry, I'm ignoring people in the chat. Sorry. Is there a way to enlarge his screen on my view so I can see it? Let's see. I might be able to zoom in a little bit more here, Jenny. Let me see if that helps. Let me zoom in. Really? Let's go 120. Does that help, Jenny? Minimizing. Okay. Is that helpful at all? Should I go in? I could probably go in a little bit more. Full screen in the top right where the dots are. Yes, I can, but is that going to make it any bigger? Oh, you're talking to them. Sorry. Now I can see the worksheet. Anne says I can barely see. Let's do this one at a time. Let me minimize that. And do this. Is that helpful? And I can zoom in a little bit more if folks want. How's that? Better, thanks. Okay. Yeah, I can totally see how looking at this might be very difficult if it's small on your screen. Grab the bottom bar at the top with everyone's initials is too big. Grab the bottom of it and push it up. John, are you talking to me or are you talking to Jenny and Lori?
He's talking to all of us.
Okay.
That does make a big difference because then those boxes aren't as big on your screen.
Mm-hmm. All right, so just to wrap this up, what's wrong with letter D? I do see this sometimes where I don't see the copyright logo and I see C. And then I see at the end of the field that there is no period, which is right. But the problem is here, 264 second indicator 1, subfield C, 1977. That's not correct. That should have a period. Or if it's in brackets, that's okay. Now, do we all understand the difference? Wait, ask the question again now that we can see it. Now that I've already given you the answer, the correct answer is C. Everybody understand the difference between if you see 1977 in brackets versus period? Does everybody understand the difference between those two? If you have a definite publishing date, not just a copyright date, but if you have a publication date, an edition date that's definitive, put it here, 1977 with a period. If you see this, that means that that date information more than likely was taken from the copyright date, that there's no additional date specifying the publication date, or that it was taken outside of the resource. Does that make sense to everybody? The difference between the two? But never do we want to see this. Bracket and then period. Okay. What's this going to look like when I go back up here?
Hey, John?
Yes.
Well, we're on that 264. Do you want to explain the indicators at all? Just briefly? Or show them how to find them on OCLC?
Sure. I've got OCLC over here. Give me just a minute and I'll pull up the 264 field.
The main ones we see, of course, on printed materials, 1, the second indicator 1.
Right.
Is for publication, and the second indicator 4 is for copyright date. Just kind of helps, I think, to know why the second date is entered often.
Right. So this is the 264 page, which of course replaced the old 260 field under AACR2. 264 second indicator 1 indicating publication information. And occasionally we'll see this, especially on audio video materials where the distributor really matters. On movies, what the film distributor is, or on music, who the music distributor is. Not so much on books, but we do see it. That's the second indicator 2. The second indicator 3, manufacturer. And then the second indicator 4 for the copyright information. But most of the time we will see this right here. That's the information we really want to know when it comes to books.
This is Lori, and just for fun, I was excited when I was doing Library of Things. Cake pans always have a manufacture date.
Mm-hmm.
That was just really fun. So I had to use second indicator 3.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes we'll find materials where that's the only place where we can get some information, like a date, for example, where we'll have publication information, but we don't have a date, and then we have to go down to distribution if that information is available, then manufacture if that's available. And if there's no copyright date, sometimes that's the only way we can get date information is second indicator 3, manufacture. It just depends on the item, of course. But all this information, and there's plenty, OCLC is always great for examples. There's plenty of information as to how we would use all of those and how we would use all the subfields. But once again, I caution you, take a look at this. Not all punctuation rules are the same, right? Notice how after the end of 1875, OCLC doesn't have final punctuation. We would have final punctuation right there. We would put a period at the end of that.
Can I ask a question about something?
Please.
I know in the in the 700 fields, normally you have, you know, like if you've got an author with a date and the E field that says author, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed lately that sometimes, and there's punctuation for all of that in the 700 field. That's not one of the places we omit it, right?
Right. There is punctuation. Are you talking about like the date specifically? Hyphen at the date?
Well, no. What I was going to ask about is, I think it was just last week, maybe the week before, I noticed that several records that I created, and I didn't notice it in all of them, but I also hadn't been looking for it, started having double punctuation in the completed OPAC display of the record. And if I went back and deleted the punctuation that I had inserted, there would be no punctuation in the MARC record view, in the MARC record editor view, and then there would be punctuation in the OPAC visible version of the record. It was being inserted by something somewhere, and it was not me, and when I inserted my own, then it was duplicated. So I had to go back and just delete the punctuation from those records to make it.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry. Ryan, that's probably an OPAC display issue. So just make sure the record is correct, and if the punctuation is duplicated in the OPAC, let me know, and I'll see if I can figure out what's causing it.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, so that's a difference between the record itself and how it displays in the public catalog.
Okay.
So just to kind of take a look and see here, you can see in this record, we've got punctuation here at the end of the 700 fields here with the period,
right.
which is
and
correct.
I had it like that, and then when I looked at it in the OPAC view, after that, the punctuation in all of those fields was doubled up.
Mm-hmm.
So like at the end of the, like there where it says artist period, then it has the bracket, whatever you call it, and it has a period outside of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was doing the same thing with the commas. There were double commas everywhere at the end of the fields that I put commas. Like in the name, there wasn't a duplicate, but after the name, there was a duplicate comma. So,
and what I'm seeing here is it's adding the parenthesis as well, which was not in the record. In each of those on the MARC record,
yes,
artist was not in parenthesis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing
so
there
it must be
is
display.
Artist period. Yeah, there are some display things that are working against correct practice, if I may put it that way. And so we always want to go with correct practice, like you were, Ryan, and then we can make OPAC adjustments. We can bluff it off on Beth and say, Beth, can you fix the OPAC display? And but yeah, that's always my preference. And I'm sure when we did the update, Beth, I can't imagine for you and John how many of those types of issues there must have been messing with the OPAC. Looking at John's comment here in the example. Oh, I'm sorry, John. I'm way late on this. C, shouldn't the date in 264.4 be the same as that in subfield? Did you mean second indicator 1 brackets? Since it's assumed that the publication date is the same as the copyright. Not always. Not always. Especially for something like 1984, where there is a copyright date of his original text here, but then this new edition in 1977, and it could be that it is, you know, some revisions are made, or a new abridgment, or a new foreword, or a new, you know, whatever constitutes a different manifestation. So oftentimes you will see that, which is the reason for the subfield T in the date statement. Sorry, kind of a tangent back to the quiz. I should have been paying attention.
That's okay. I just had a question because since the date was in brackets, it was an undefined publication date. And so are you then doing a research to find out the original publication by that publisher?
In that specific example, I was just illustrating punctuation.
Right. I know. And I can't help it. I'm taking it a step further because I just want to verify that if we end up in a situation where we have brackets and subfield 4 is the copyright date, should those match if the publication date isn't explicitly stated on the TP Verso?
Not necessarily, because brackets can indicate, of course, that that information was found outside the resource.
Right.
And so I can imagine a scenario, not very likely, but I can imagine a scenario where we have a new edition that leaves out the date, although that doesn't happen very often. Could we go with just copyright date? I suppose we could if we needed to, and then have 1949 in the brackets. But if it's obvious that it's a new edition,
then technically it should be the date of the current publication. I understand that.
Right.
So,
but your question, of course, is a valid one. That what if they didn't decide to include that in the resource?
yeah. So.
Boy, I'd like to see an example of that. That'd be fun.
Right, and that's why I was asking because I'm thinking, AACR2, you only had one line, you had the 260. So this whole RDA 264 multiple lines thing is still not intuitive to me, even though it's not how I immediately think about how to do this stuff. So
right. Yeah.
And from what I've read too, just as a side note, the second indicator 4 with the copyright date isn't, if it's the same as the first or the second indicator 1, you don't have to repeat it. It's not a requirement in RDA. So yeah, it's a very interesting thing sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, if for example, let's pretend 1984 was actually written in 1977, we could lose that, and that would be perfectly fine. If the copyright date and the publication date matched, we would see 1977 in brackets with a date statement of S in 1977 and date 1. Right, Dia? Is that what you're talking about?
Okay.
Correct.
I think. Okay. Good question. Very good question. Example record.
So, John, I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's fine.
Well,
I was going to move on, but
well, you mentioned the new PCC guidelines and presented the punctuation cheat sheet. But does that punctuation cheat sheet incorporate the PCC guidelines from 2019?
No, it does not. No, it doesn't.
So, if we're going to encounter records that have this new punctuation strategy, I guess I'm just wondering, do we leave it? Do we correct it? Are we going to adjust our punctuation cheat sheet to match that?
My thought is that this basically outlines what our policy is now and what we have been doing. So this is going to more closely align with what our OPAC is. If at some future date we decide that we need to adjust our punctuation policy to adopt the new PCC guidelines, and we're going to go with fewer pieces of punctuation, fewer pieces of terminal punctuation, then perhaps we decide that at a future date. But I wanted to be absolutely sure that when folks start seeing these records, that they continue doing what existing SAGE policy is. So that, say, for example, if you make some OPAC changes, you know, that they will align with what correct practice is for everybody in SAGE, and so we don't have differing punctuation. It's an attempt to be as consistent as we can for this moment in time, and if in the future we need to make adjustments, we can certainly do that. But does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess it just becomes an issue as more and more records come in that way. It's more correction that we have to do to align with our standards versus standards that PCC has indicated. So I guess we just have to make that evaluation when the time comes, but I don't want us to spend a lot of time correcting punctuation with incoming records.
You're right. I don't either, and it would be an interesting poll to poll the group right now to see if there's anybody that have you been seeing these type of PCC records with minimal punctuation and no terminal punctuation. I'll just, since we have everybody here, it would be a good opportunity if anybody has seen those or wants to comment on that. Has there been anybody seeing those? I haven't really, but.
Well, I was just going to say that maybe it would make sense to, at the top, put a note that if you're seeing a record that doesn't match the punctuation listed on the cheat sheet, that it might be a PCC record, and to check the description field.
Yeah, maybe I'll include that in one of these general rules here.
That's actually a good idea.
It's a great idea. Thanks, John.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine.
Would you be able to include the link to that? Oh, I was going to ask if you could include or send out the link to that document that you posted earlier.
The
PCC guidelines.
Stuff? Okay.
Yeah.
I also have this spreadsheet, but this is more just the actual fields as opposed to the verbiage. But I have that document, and I'll send it to you, and I'll make sure. Is there a way we can attach files to the minutes? There is, right? That might be one to attach in the minutes for folks, so everybody can have that.
Yes, we can attach files.
Okay. All right. Well, it is almost 11 o'clock. This has been such a great meeting. I will leave you all with one last thing, and that is, if you find yourself needing some ideas for some work at home you can do during this time when we're all kind of, our schedules are all out of whack, I just wanted to give you some ideas for some training courses that you could do. There's some that are really involved and some that aren't. These WebJunction courses are all free. They're from OCLC. They're a little old, as you can tell, but they're not that taxing. And so I'd encourage you to look through some of these collection management courses here. I know for one, I'll be taking Adam Schiff's presentation right here. He's excellent. But if you find yourself with some hours you need to fill at home or whatever, take a look at doing some of these. There's a whole bunch of them. I'll probably end up taking the subject headings one too. Some of you have jumped into this Library Juice Academy course on Introduction to RDA. I know Lori's doing it. I think Celine's doing it also. Send an email if you want something a little bit more in-depth on Introduction to RDA. Send an email over here to inquiries@libraryjuiceacademy.com. It doesn't cost anything. They'll get you some login information, and either one of these courses are being offered right now as sample courses. And so I'd encourage you, if this is a time when you can manage to sneak in some of these trainings, I'd encourage you to take advantage of it, just so that we can continue to Kind of keeps our chops up, especially when we get to RDA adoption later this year. All right, and I'll include links to these in the minutes for everybody. Library Juice Academy is here, and WebJunction you can find through OCLC WebJunction. All right, well, I was worried we weren't going to have enough stuff, but we've got some great discussion happening. Thanks everybody for being here. We're going to have our next meeting in 2 months, in June, first week of June. What is it that the British say? Keep calm and carry on. Is that what it is? So we'll. Oh, Lori says send out the WebJunction page via email. Yep, I'll do that. I'll probably send an email to the whole cat with all of these links on them for you all. So anyway, have a good lunch, everybody. I'll see you in 2 months. Thanks for being here, and adios.